Today's story is one of quiet strength, unspoken sorrows, and unbreakable bonds. Set against the haunting backdrop of war in Afghanistan, it follows two women, Mariam and Leila, strangers at first, brought together by faith and bound by pain, hope, and love. Crafted with heartbreaking honesty and poetic grace, Khaled Hosseini weaves a tale that is both intimate and epic, each word soaked in emotion, every chapter a cry for freedom, love, and dignity. This is not just a tale of survival, it's a story of womanhood, sacrifice, and the thousand splendid suns that still rise even after the darkest nights. Mariam was born in a small mud house on the edge of Guldaman. She was 5 years old and lived with her mother, Nana, far away from the city of Herat, in silence, in shame, in the kind of isolation that only children like her are forced to carry. Her mother had once been a servant in a beautiful house filled with chandeliers and laughter, a house that belonged to Jalil, Mariam's father, a wealthy man with a silver beard, 3 wives, 9 children, a cinema hall, a business, and the admiration of the entire town. Mariam, however, had none of that. She was born from a secret and from a mistake. While his other children went to school every morning in polished shoes, holding colorful lunchboxes and dreams, Mariam spent her days feeding chickens, cleaning her house, and listening to her mother speak bitter truths about his father and her future. Jalil visited her every Thursday, and for Mariam, Thursdays were the most beautiful days in the world. She would clean her house, comb her hair, and wear the prettiest dress she had, even though she didn't have many, and wait at the door with wide eyes. When Jalil came, he brought gifts for Mariam, a beautiful wooden elephant, a sketchbook, a mirror, and lots of stories. Stories of Persian kings, flying carpets, and magics. Mariam listened mesmerized. She believed every word because when he looked at her, she felt seen. She would sit beside him and ask questions, laugh at her jokes, and wish those Thursdays would last forever. In those moments, she believed she was like his all other children. Mariam imagined herself in their lives, eating ice cream from glass bowls, watching films in Jalil's cinema, being a part of something bigger than the lonely world she knew. But reality was completely different. Jalil's other children lived lives so different, so distant from Mariam's. It was as if they belonged to another universe entirely, one she could only glimpse through stories he told her and memories she stitched together from overheard conversations. They had toys, birthdays with cakes and candles, and families that sat around warm dining table and told stories late into the night. And Mariam had chickens in the yard, a cracked window that let in more cold than light, and a roof that groaned with every gust of wind. She had mud on her shoes and bruises on her knees, and a silence that wrapped herself around her heart like a second skin. Her school was the corner of the room where Nana would sit on a worn rug and tell her stories of loss, of shame, and of the world outside, a world that would never ever accept her. But more than anything else, she had a mother who reminded her every single day of the truth she could never escape. "You are nothing for them, Mariam," Nana would say, her voice shaking between anger and despair. "You are an unwanted child, a stain. You will never belong in his world. You are not his daughter. You are his shame." Still, despite it all, with a quite desperate kind of love, the kind of love that forgives without being asked, the kind that built palaces out of lies just to survive. Mariam loved her father like anything. Because when Jalil came to visit her on every Thursdays, with his clean clothes and charming smile, with pockets full of sweets and stories of cinema, Mariam forgot, just for a little while, that she was different. She clung for Thursdays like lifelines, like tiny windows in a better life. And when she turned 15, the longing inside her grew too large to be ignored. One afternoon, as they sat outside under the cherry tree, Mariam mustered all her courage, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "Take me to your cinema, father." Her eyes were wide with hope. "Let me see the film with you. Let me sit beside you like your other children do. Let me be your daughter, not just on Thursdays, but always." Jalil looked at her for a long moment, surprised by the ache in her voice. And then he smiled, softly, the way only Jalil could. "Of course, my flower," he said. "I will come for you in the morning. We will go together, just you and me." Mariam couldn't sleep that night. She braided her hair and unbraided it. She picked out her best dress, the green one with the tiny white flowers. She polished her shoes with an old cloth until they shined. And as the sun rose, she sat by the door, her heart fluttering with a joy she had never dared to feel before. Morning passed, then afternoon, and then evening. She didn't eat, she didn't move. She just waited for her father. Each passing hour chipped away at her hope like a chisel to stone. By sunset, her heart had turned quiet, still and broken. What she did next was unthinkable. She walked, alone, in fading light. Mariam walked the long road to Herat. She crossed all the borders she never imagined she would in her entire life. She carried her hope like a dying flame cupped in her hands. And when she reached the tall gates of Jalil's grand house, she looked up at them with wild eyes, her fingers curled around the bars. She asked the guard to call him. "Tell him Mariam is here, his daughter." But Jalil didn't come. She waited outside for hours, her back pressed against the wall, her head resting on her knees, while the windows of the house glowed with laughter and dinner and warmth, everything she had never been allowed to touch. And the truth slowly sank in. Jalil wasn't coming. He was inside, pretending she didn't exist, because his wife's beautiful, dignified, powerful, couldn't stand the reminder of his mistake. And Jalil, her beloved father, had chosen them. In the morning, a servant came out with a tray of food and a cold voice. "You should go home now," he said. "Your father isn't here, he's away." Mariam didn't cry. Something inside her had already collapsed, quietly, irrevocably. She turned around and walked back. When she reached the little mud house she called home, it was far too silent. No sound of fire crackling or pots clenching, or Nana's voice grumbling about man and faith. Only the birds sang. And then she saw the rope hanging from the tree outside, swinging gently in the morning breeze. Nana's body was hung still. Mariam screamed. She screamed until her throat burned, until her knees collapsed, until the world disappeared around her. Later she would wonder, had she broken her mother's heart? Was it her wish to see her father that broke Nana? Was it her stubbornness, her need to believe in love, that pushed her mother to that final act? The truth was simpler. Nana had always believed that Jalil would never choose them, and when Mariam chose to believe otherwise, it confirmed everything Nana feared. So Nana left before the world could take anything more. And Mariam was left with this unbearable weight of it all. Her father's silence, her mother's death, and a grief too large for a 15-year-old to carry. After her mother's funeral, the world Mariam had known, a world full of sorrow and silence, came crashing down even further. Jalil's wives, cold and dismissive, made it clear that she could not stay with them. They were the ones who made the decisions, and they had decided that Mariam was nothing but a burden to their lives, and so they arranged for her to be married. Her new life was to begin with a man named Rashid, a shoemaker from Kabul. He was in his 40s, older than Mariam by at least 20 years, and her heart sank as she learned this. She was barely 15, and she couldn't even begin to imagine what this meant. The journey to Kabul was long and filled with confusion. Every mile felt like an eternity of fear, the weight of unknown pressing heavily on her fragile shoulders. When she finally arrived at his house, she found it small, dark, and cold. But there was a smile from Rashid, a smile that for a moment seemed kind. He bought her new clothes, gave her sweet tea, and made her comfortable in another room. It was nothing like the life she had imagined. But for the first time in a long while, Mariam tried to believe. He told her that he once had a wife and son, both of whom had passed away. Mariam didn't love him, not yet, but she tried. She desperately wanted to believe in the kindness of a man again, something she had longed for since the days of waiting for her father to show her love. In the beginning, Rashid tried to win her over. He brought her gifts, a shawl, a pair of bangles, a new pair of shoes. He took her to the market and let her try ice cream for the first time in her life. His words were gentle at first, and he told her not to worry. This is the time. She would get used to this life soon, and to this new home, and to him. But over time, Mariam began to see the cracks in his kindness. The transformation was very slow, but soon Rashid began to control her. He insisted that she wear the burqa, even though Mariam hated the way it made her feel trapped, like she couldn't breathe under its heavy fabric. Rashid told her it was just for her protection, that it would keep her safe from the prying eyes of men. But Mariam, though young, knew the truth. It was not protection. It was a cage. And then one night, Rashid took her, not gently, not kindly. There was no tenderness in his touch, no care in his eyes. He didn't ask for her consent. He didn't wait for her to be ready. He simply took what he wanted, and Mariam lay there, frozen, staring at the ceiling, her body no longer her own. She learned that night that even her body, the one thing that should have been hers, was not her own. Still she tried. She tried to be good wife. She cooked for him, cleaned his house, and obeyed him, hoping that her compliance, her silence, would somehow win his affection. She prayed for a child. She longed to be a mother, to feel the love that she had been deprived of all her life. But when the pregnancy came, it didn't stay. Time and time again, Mariam lost the babies she so desperately wanted to keep. And each time, her husband's coldness grew. His anger deepened. He stopped buying her gifts. His voice became harsh, and the gentleness he had once showed was replaced by the contempt. And then came the day when Mariam, exhausted from the constant work and emotional turmoil, served him a plate of rice with a small stone. The stone was an accident. She hadn't meant for it to happen. But when Rashid found it, he lost his control. He forced the rice into her mouth, choking her with the anger in his eyes. He bit her, hitting her until her body ached, until she couldn't even remember the pain anymore. Then he locked her in a room for days, leaving her alone, isolated and broken. That was the moment when Mariam finally understood. She was not a wife. She was a prisoner in his own house, bound by the chains of his cruelty. Then the war came. Bombs fell from the sky. The world around her shattered, and Kabul was thrown into chaos. Streets became rubble. Women disappeared. Children cried in the dark. In the middle of all this, Rashid brought home a second wife named Leila. She was young, beautiful, and educated, someone who seemed to have everything Mariam had never had. Leila had lost her parents to the war, and in desperation, she had nowhere else to go. Mariam's heart sank with betrayal. She hated Leila at first. She saw her as another wound, another reminder of everything she had lost. But over time, something changed. Leila, despite everything, became someone Mariam could turn to. Leila shared her pain. She protected Mariam. She took beatings for her. And most of all, Leila held her hand when Mariam cried, offering her the first true sense of friendship she had never ever known. In Leila, Mariam saw a love she had never felt before. Real love, not the kind of love that had been promised by her father or by Rashid. It was the kind of love that made Mariam believe in herself again. When Leila gave birth to her daughter, Aziza, Rashid didn't care. He didn't look at her with affection, didn't care for her as a father should. But Mariam, for the first time in her life, had someone to love. She held Aziza. She rocked her to sleep. She sang her songs, and for the first time, she felt what it was like to belong, to be part of something bigger than herself. But then came Zalmai, Leila's second child, a son, Rashid's favorite, and with him, everything returned to the way it had been. The beatings, the silence, the coldness, and one day, Rashid discovered that Leila had been in contact with Tariq, the man she had once loved. He exploded in a fit of rage. He attacked her, nearly killed her, and Mariam, watching in horror as Rashid's cruelty reached its peak. And in that moment, something within Mariam snapped. She had spent her life waiting to be loved, to be chosen, to be seen. But every man who had come into her life had abandoned her, ignored her, or used her. No more. She picked up a shovel and she ended it. She ended Rashid's life. The man who had hurt her, the man who had tried to break her spirit. They could have run. They could have left Kabul, left everything behind. But Mariam didn't want it to. She didn't want to be free. Not for herself. She wanted freedom for Leila and Aziza. She wanted them to have a life without fear, without the shadow of Rashid hanging over them. And so Mariam went to prison. She accepted her fate, knowing that she had given her life for love, for the kind of love that she had never ever known. In her final days, Mariam thought of her father, of the man who had told her stories, who had once smiled at her. She thought of Rashid, of the man who had shown kindness only to control her and then punish her for loving too much. She thought of all the men who had touched her life, all the men who had left her, abandoned her, ignored her, None of them had stayed. None of them had chosen her. None of them had loved her without hurting her. Mariam had been born without a name, place, and a choice. She had been born into a world of shadows, but in the end, she died with something she had never had before: peace. Because in the end, she had given her life for love, for Leila. If Mariam's story touched your heart, and if you felt her pain, then stay with me. There are so many stories waiting to be told. Would you like me to read each chapter of 1,000 splendid suns separately, slowly, gently, one by one? Let me know. Or would you like us to begin a new journey? Tell me which book should I read next for you. If you felt connected in any way, please like, share and subscribe to Rainy Reads. It really helps more gentle souls find this peace. I'll see you in next story. Until then, take care and keep listening.